Greetings and welcome to the Libertarian presidential debate, the only North Carolina hosted debate during the entire 2016 presidential primary election cycle. I am Brad Hessel, IT manager of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. My purpose here is to explain how we selected the candidates who were participating, introduce our moderator, and hand it over to him for the rest of the program. In accordance with North Carolina election law, the Libertarian Party of North Carolina submitted a list of candidates for president to the North Carolina Board of Elections back on December 16, 2015. We included all 10 individuals who were then listed on the National Libertarian Party's website as officially recognized candidates, plus Gary Johnson, as we possessed credible intelligence that he was imminently about to announce his candidacy, which he subsequently did. We then conducted an online poll asking people to select the candidate they most wanted to see in the debate. The poll listed all 11 candidates on the Libertarian primary ballot. That is, the same list of candidates we'd submitted to the Board of Elections, plus none of the above. We wanted to limit the debate to 5 or 6 candidates because we were not confident that we could manage more in an online forum. As it turned out, there was a clear differentiation between the top 5 finishers in the poll: Gary Johnson, Austin Petersen, Steve Kerbel, Darryl Perry, and Jack Robinson, and the rest of the field. In fact, none of the above finished 6th. So those were the 5 who were originally invited. In the interim, another candidate entered the race who is consistently polled in the top 3 to 5 in polls that include him, John McAfee, even though he is not on the ballot in our non-binding presidential primary in the greater interest of educating voters here in North Carolina and across the nation. After checking with the original 5 candidates to ensure that no one objected, we decided to invite Mr. McAfee to participate, and he has accepted. And by the way, thanks to the 2,400 plus folks who voted in our poll. And now, about our moderator, Barry Smith. He is Associate Editor of Carolina Journal, which is a publication of the John Locke Foundation. Barry was born in Chatham County and grew up in Alamance County, where he currently resides. His career as a North Carolina-based journalist spans 4 decades, if you count his work for the Daily Tar Heel while attending UNC Chapel Hill in the mid-'70s. We carefully scheduled to avoid conflicting with the ACC basketball tournament, in part because we figured it would be a bad idea to ask Barry to choose between watching the Tar Heels and moderating this debate. Barry, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brad. North Carolina's presidential primary is Tuesday, March the 15th, and you'll be eligible to vote in the Libertarian Party presidential primary if you are registered with the Libertarian Party or if you're registered unaffiliated in North Carolina. Early voting is already underway, so please Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm sorry. Should I start this over? I'll do this real quickly. Okay, North Carolina's presidential primary is on Tuesday, March the 15th, and you'll be eligible to vote in the Libertarian Party presidential primary if you are registered with the Libertarian Party or if you're registered unaffiliated. Early voting is already underway, so please consult your local elections board for times and locations for early voting. Also, please remember that in North Carolina, our new voter ID law has taken effect with this primary. You will need an approved government ID to vote this year unless you have a reasonable impediment to getting an ID or you're voting absentee. So please remember to take your ID with you when you go to the polls or to your early voting site. So let's introduce the candidates, starting out with former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. Mr. Steve Kerbel of Colorado, who is an entrepreneur and author. We have Darryl Perry of New Hampshire, an author, publisher, and TV host. We have Jack Robinson of South Carolina, a business owner. And also joining us is John McAfee, a cybersecurity entrepreneur. The rules are very simple. Again, I'm going to ask each candidate to give an opening statement, tell us a little bit about them, and it's going to be based on the order in which they finished in the poll. Answers to questions will be 1 minute with 30 seconds additionally if follow-up questions are needed. Each candidate will have the same question. If a candidate specifically criticizes another participating candidate or his position, that candidate will have 30 seconds for a response. Closing statements will come in the end in reverse order, and you'll be given 1 minute for each candidate. Okay, let's begin with the questions, and the first one goes to Governor Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I got to give you introductions. Thank you, and it goes to Governor Johnson. You're first.
Well, I think that government is too big. I think that it spends too much money. I think that it overregulates. And that we need to balance the federal budget. So that would be #1 priority, would be to balance the federal budget. To balance the federal budget, we've got to cut approximately 20% from what we're currently spending. So that does entail addressing the entitlements, Medicaid and Medicare being the big ones in the room. Military spending has to be addressed, keeping in mind that we spend more money on the military, or as much money on the military as all the other countries in the world combined. So that is an absolute priority. When government takes more of our money, when it takes our money, it takes away our freedom, it takes away our liberty. I think there is an erosion of civil liberties in this country that is ongoing. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. I think this country is based on liberty and freedom and the personal responsibility that goes along with that. And it's something that I firmly believe. I also believe that there is a very real Islamic terrorist threat, but that we can deal with this without putting boots on the ground, without militarily intervening, without dropping bombs, without flying the drones that are ending up killing thousands of innocent people that are making the situation worse, not better. The military interventions are not the cause for Islamic terrorism, but the military interventions are making things worse, not better. So that's my opening statement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now Mr. Petersen.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the Libertarian Party of North Carolina for inviting me to your debate and for hosting this. My name is Austin Petersen. I'm a presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. I'm the youngest candidate in the race, but I'm the oldest in libertarian years. I joined the National Committee's party in 2008 as the volunteer coordinator, where I turned the national office into a powerhouse of activism for liberty, and I cut my teeth by doing ballot access for the Libertarian Party, petitioning to put libertarians like Bill Redpath on the ballot. And I've been serving the party and the movement for years. At that time, I brainchilded an effort to get Judge Andrew Napolitano of Fox Business, his own television show. That project was successful because of my social media prowess. I'm sort of a community organizer for libertarians, but not like that other community organizer, somebody who believes in freedom. And that's what I'm running on, a platform of economic freedom and personal liberty. I want to cut taxes and I want to cut spending across the board. I'm asking for Congress to send me legislation next year after I take my oath of office, to send me legislation that would be across the board spending cuts. I think that the American people have to balance their own checkbooks. So should the government. We should move towards a balanced budget, and we don't need to be looking at having a federal war on drugs anymore. I think that we need to have a conversation about what is essentially not a criminal problem, but a personal health problem. And we need to have this conversation with people because of the people who are suffering, and we need to have criminal justice reform. I believe in a better America for the future. I believe that I'm the future of the Libertarian Party, and I hope that you will nominate me for President of the United States. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. And next, Mr. Kerbel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Kerbel. You know, I believe our country was founded by people who understood the realities of living under a tyrannical government. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin, and more designed the structure of this nation conceived in liberty. They warned us not to allow so many conditions that exist today, and we did not heed their warnings. We've let our government get away from us. The only way to get back the liberties that represent the vision of the nation's founders is to immediately reduce the size, scope, and cost of government. If we can do this, the near-term benefits will include more individual liberty to people to live their chosen lives in peace, more opportunity for all of us from which to choose how to live our lives, a more peaceful world. I think that there's several key points. I mean, there's so many things that we need to do, but just to identify a few, we need to stop the income tax. We've got to stop, in my view, it's theft. It's basically just taking away from the people to fund a government that hurts the people, and there is no winner other than government, and the people lose. We've got to stop this insane drug war. You know, right now, last statistic I saw showed that 22% of Americans have criminal records. Now, if you think about that, if you combine that with the fact that regulation is making small business nearly impossible, and that would be the out for anyone who doesn't conform to the normal system, then basically they're not going to be able to get jobs in large corporations. They're not going to be able to get jobs in government. They're not going to be able to do anything else other than just try to figure out how to survive. And what happens if this drug war continues? 22% becomes 30, 40, 50%, and our economy is destroyed. Our nation is destroyed. We need to stop this now. We need to stop attacking sovereign nations that don't pose a threat. One of the reasons we have the problems we do and the reputation we do around the world is we sure like dropping bombs on people, and that does not make friends, that makes enemies. If we want a more peaceful world, we need to be more non-interventionist and a lot less trying to change other nations. We have to always be mindful of liberty of the individual as a basic foundation for all decisions made regarding the how we manage the country.
Okay, thank you,
I'm
Mr.
Steve
Kerbel.
Kerbel. I'm just the guy to lead the charge to take our country back from the overreaching government and give real liberty back to the people as the founders so brilliantly planned for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerbel. And now we move to Mr. Perry.
Hello, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I represent the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. I represent freedom on every issue, every time, no exception. 100% freedom that you get to control your life the way you see fit, as long as you don't cause unjust harm to another person. Freedom means that since you don't have the legitimate right to initiate force against someone else, that no one else has the legitimate right to initiate force against you. That means that you can't delegate that right to someone else. You can't delegate that right to a group. That group includes government. You cannot delegate a right to government that you don't possess. You don't possess the right to claim any of the fruits of my labor. That means that no government should have the right to claim parts of the fruits of my labor either. All taxation is theft. And if elected, I would make sure that I do everything in my power to eliminate all coercive taxation. Anything provided for by government should be provided for voluntarily. Just like the corner news store that you go shop at. You shop there voluntarily. They don't steal money from you because you happen to be in a geographic area that's near them. No government should exist in such a manner either. So if you support freedom on every issue like I do, then throw your support behind me. Darryl W. Perry, 2016.
Okay, thank you. And now we go to Mr. Robinson. You need to unmute, Mr. Robinson. We're still not hearing you, Mr. Robinson. There you go.
You got me?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jack Robinson, and North Carolina is my home state. I was born and raised in Winston-Salem and Lexington and attended Wake Forest University. I'm running for president in order to spread the word of a new economic policy called trickle-up economics, of which I am the originator. There are several programs within, each designed to alleviate one of the great social or economic problems facing our nation. We will all be wealthy, healthy, and free without big government or high taxes. One program breaks the poverty cycle. Another provides universal health care. There's a program for college or technical training and another for wealthy retirement. I have the winning hand. There are only two credible candidates in this race, Gary Johnson and me. Gary, for twice having been governor, and me, for my new economic ideas. My vision for winning this election is to have the best message, mine, delivered by the best candidate, Gary, with a unified voice from our party of freedom and liberty. I'm angry over my opponents who tarnish the credibility of this party. We have a drug kingpin, a businessman under investigation for securities fraud, a hobo anarchist, another who wants public hangings in front of children in order to induce fear and force compliance, and finally Austin Petersen, S-I-N, a cowardly liar who, having been soundly beaten by my son at the Georgia debate, misled his followers by editing him out of the video. As a businessman and his opponent, I find him immature, generally a failure at all he has attempted, believes cute is more important than competence, has irresponsible policies, and who, by his own admission, is a razzling, dazzling liar. Finally, to the other candidates, Trump, you are a weak man, without policy except hate and boast. Hillary, you are guilty of negligent homicide and should be held accountable. And Bernie, you are taking advantage of young, inexperienced minds to spread a message of lies and slavery. Put on your big boy panties, gentlemen. This is going to be a debate.
Thank you so much. And since you were attacked specifically, Mr. Petersen, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond if you wish in just a moment. But first, let's go to Mr. McAfee for his opening remarks. Mr. McAfee, are you there?
Okay, here we go. First of all, I would like to thank the Libertarian Party for inviting me and bending your rules. I hope you're not disappointed after this. I'd like to also say, Austin, I think you stole my tie at the last convention. I have one just like that. Either you or Gary Johnson did. I'm not sure which. But in any case, in protest, I'm not wearing a tie tonight. I'd like to say first that there has been a paradigm shift in politics and in campaigning in the past 4 years. 60% of millennials never watch TV, never listen to the radio, and never read a newspaper. 40% of all social media users do not watch TV. They get all of their information from the internet. I'm a master at this. My YouTube channel has over 10 million views of videos that I have created. I write for 4 international publications. Business Insider, I started 3 months ago, and I've had 2.5 million reads on my articles. Of the other 3, I've had over 15 million reads. There have been 41,000 articles written about me in the past 12 months with a total readership of 300 million people. Now, this is how you reach people. This did not cost me a dime. Campaigning has shifted. We have a new paradigm, and this is the year of the libertarians because we do not have the money and the power that the other candidates have in the 2 major parties. We can use these magical mediums to reach far more people than Trump or Hillary can in a national debate. So I'm not going to talk about my policies now because I am positive I will be asked questions about them. But I wanted to start that by saying We are out the gate running.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Petersen, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond to Mr. Robinson's comments since you were singled out. Also, in just a moment after Mr. Petersen, if he wants to, when he finishes, others were also talked about by Mr. Robinson, and you will also have a chance to respond. You'll need to unmute and chime in, but first let's go to Mr. Petersen.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess the attack was that I had somehow edited out his son in the video. It was actually because I think the battery had died on the camcorder, so they had to turn it off and turn it back on again. So we have no problem, of course, getting your son's clip out there. We have no problem hearing the truth because that's what we really want. The Petersen campaign is all about exposure because I'm trying to get more people into this party and to get more ideas out. Obviously, I think that my ideas are the best, so I have no problem sitting next to all of these candidates tonight and letting all of the opinions be heard in the light of day. I think more people need to be educated about libertarian ideas. Of course, there's nothing libertarian about Mr. Robinson or his son's birth loop economics. It's just socialism warmed over. But the libertarians are very excited about my campaign, and everywhere I go, there are young people who are coming out and shaking.
Mr. Petersen, your 30 seconds is up for responding. Thank you.
To me, I think that it's very important for us to discuss what really matters, which is the future of this party. That's what I'm fighting for. The future of the liberty movement.
Thank you, Mr. Petersen.
That's what I represent.
Do any of the other candidates who feel like that they were attacked in the opening statement by Mr. Robinson wish to respond? If not, we'll move on to the next question. Okay, I don't see anyone chiming in. So, Mr. Petersen, you will get the you'll be up first on the first question. This year, we've seen a lot of turbulence in the presidential campaigns of the two major parties, along with a lot of voter dissatisfaction. If you are the Libertarian Party nominee, how will you tap into that voter dissatisfaction and advance the cause of liberty? Also, please touch on how you will appeal to those who already consider themselves libertarians. Mr. Petersen, you need to unmute. You need to unmute, Mr. Petersen.
Okay, now you're
Okay, we're
live.
back. All right. So let me go ahead and answer that question. So I'm already appealing to libertarian voters. That's why I'm doing so well in the polls. But how will I appeal to the general electorate? I have the most appealing platform, and not only do I have the most appealing platform, but I think I have the best strategy to get the Libertarian Party a historic vote total, because I will appeal to those conservative voters who won't vote for a pro-choice candidate, for example, because I am pro-life, and I think that a lot of those conservatives who don't like Donald Trump are going to like me because I believe in a culture of life, and I've been convinced by Dr. Ron Paul and his consistent life ethic. He changed my mind on that issue, and I think he could change yours if more people listen to Dr. Ron Paul. We should have supported him. But I think I can get a lot of those Bernie Sanders supporters. You know, I will be the youngest presidential candidate in American history and the first millennial. I think that young people are very disenfranchised by the politics that have been given to us by the baby boomer generation, who have bankrupted us, given us $20 million in debt. And these are the issues that I will champion. We need to have reform about student loans. And these are the issues that young people care about. And a lot of Ted Cruz supporters, Ben Carson supporters have been calling me and saying, hey, listen, Austin, we love your platform. Keep fighting. And we are going to join the Libertarian Party, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build this party, build this movement, and I'll be here when all these other candidates are gone. I promise you that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And now it's your turn, Mr. Kerbel.
Well, you know, one of the big keys we have as a movement is to be reasonable, to be intelligent, to be mature, to explain our positions clearly to Americans in such a way that they can really understand how libertarianism relates to them. You know, we have a great field of people here, a lot of accomplished people, you know, that are here tonight, and I think all of us speaking together for the cause of liberty is very helpful to the movement. So the real key is, you know, in my view, everyone in some way, shape, or form is a libertarian. It's our job to explain that to them, make them see it, and recognize the fact that libertarianism is based on liberty and not anything else that you may see or hear in other people's descriptions of our policies.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Mr. Perry.
So I plan to appeal primarily to libertarians and people that lean libertarian by giving a consistent pro-liberty message. Not wavering, not giving a message of half measures, of incrementalism, but promoting liberty, every issue, every time, 100% liberty. And as I mentioned earlier, that means that you should have the right to do as you please as long as you don't cause unjust harm to another person. And that's appealing to people because people want to be able to be free. People don't want to be controlled. Although a lot of times people don't act in their own self-interest. They wind up voting for Republicans and Democrats that do just that. The Republicans and Democrats have consistently controlled people. But people are scared and they think libertarian and this other party that's really bad will win. You need to get out of that mindset. If you vote for a libertarian can win.
Okay. Thank you. And now it's your turn, Mr. Robinson. Please unmute.
Does that help?
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, people are looking for solutions, and they're looking to us to solve them. Austin could not be more wrong about this being a socialist program. These are the first ever ultra-capitalistic libertarian programs put into practice. We've never had one before. I challenge myself, believing that our way, freedom, free market, and small government was a better way, and I challenged myself to prove it and come up with solutions with those principles, and that's what trickle-up economics is. We will bring people to our party by ending poverty, but by meeting their needs. We'll end poverty for the first time ever. We will break the poverty cycle. We'll provide health care, college, wealthy retirement, and we will restructure our international aid to help other countries with health, welfare, and infrastructure rebuilding. And that's how we will attract people to our party. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Petersen, I will also, after we finish this round, give you 30 seconds to respond since you were brought up. But next we want to go to Mr. McAfee.
The bottom.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Okay.
You're on mute.
Mr. McAfee, you need to unmute.
Here.
Maybe just skip them.
There you go.
No, I do need to be muted.
Okay, we will, Mr. Johnson, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and go to you. Mr. McAfee isn't on, so your turn.
I think this election right now is just unprecedented. I think that we have the two most polarized political figures in the country that are going to win their nominations, Hillary on the Democrat side, Trump on the Republican side. I think that the Democrat nominee has to appeal to 30% of the far left to get the nomination. I think the Republican candidate has to appeal in this case to that 30% that believes that the scourge of the earth has to do with Mexican immigration, but that's Donald Trump's core group. And when 50% of Americans now describe themselves as being independent, I think what you're left with is just a solid 30% representation by the two major parties. So I think there's going to be a collective head jerk in America on who is the third party. The Libertarian nominee will be on the ballot in all 50 states. No other third party is going to be able to lay claim to that because of deadlines that have already passed. So very, very significant. This is something that libertarians need to consider in this nomination, is who does best represent libertarians, because this is really an historical opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McAfee, you weren't with us for a second, or we couldn't get you on, so if you want to respond to the question.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Okay.
I've personally brought over 5,000 new members to the Libertarian Party in the past month and a half. I believe that all Americans are libertarians. I can speak to no one who does not believe our government is engorged and overburdened and ineffective. I know of no one who does not believe in personal freedom and personal privacy. I know of no one who believes it's okay to hurt someone or to take their stuff. We are all, as Americans, libertarians. Donald Trump has garnered anger, but people who are angry will also listen to the heart. And if we speak to the heart, from the heart, and say, yes, I'm suffering too, and here are the answers, and there are simple answers, and they're answers that you will understand. That's how we get the people behind us, sir.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Petersen, since you were referred to by Mr. Robinson, I'm going to give you 30 seconds if you wish to respond to his remarks.
I mean, yes, I obviously don't want to discuss Mr. Robinson's socialistic programs. What I'd like to talk about is what I'm going to do, which is a free market program. I've received the highest recommendation from a National Humanities Award winner by the name of Lou Lehrman, who sat on Ron Paul's Gold Commission in 1980, wrote the case for gold, and I have put together a plan of reform of our nation's monetary system. This is called free banking, and what I would like to do is hold my own commission, similar to what Lou and Ron did in the 80s. And what I would like to do is return to a free market monetary system. This would allow competition against the Federal Reserve so that the free market could work. Why don't we have a free market in money? I hope that the American people will join me in this conversation, because my campaign is all about cutting government. It's not about growing government, like Mr. Robinson proposes. It's about a free market in money, and that's what I'm advocating.
Thank you. And Mr. Robinson, since you were brought up there, you get a chance for 30 seconds to respond to Mr. Petersen if you desire. You're muted. You need to unmute. There you go.
Okay. I don't need 30 seconds. Really, just every time someone hears him say that this is a socialistic policy, just simply know that that's a claim made out of total ignorance. Nothing else to say.
Okay. Thank you. And now, Mr. Kerbel, you will get the question first this time. Is there anything in the Libertarian Party national platform that you disagree with or have reservations about? If so, please tell us what it is and why.
Who are you asking?
This one goes to Mr. Kerbel first.
Got it. You know, I think the platform makes a lot of sense. I think it's well thought out. It's had many years to evolve. You know, I really don't take issue with many items in it. There would be a few things I would add. And I would say that you know, one of the problems we face as a nation is excessive lawsuits. There's too much burden on business and people in defending themselves against vexatious lawsuits that are brought with no merit for the purpose of getting an easy buck. And I think that libertarians believe do what you want to as long as you don't hurt anybody else. But when you're bringing lawsuits with no merit, you are hurting somebody else. I think there needs to be a penalty for that, and I think that penalty should be loser pays. I think if we do that, I really believe that we as a nation will spend more time being productive and a lot less time chasing each other around trying to make a dollar.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Kerbel, I think I've been mispronouncing your name, and I apologize for that. Hopefully I'll get it right next time. Next, Mr. Perry, your chance to respond to the question.
So there's not really anything with per se, although I do have a bit of an issue with the immigration plank of the platform, which on the one hand says we support free and open immigration, but then promptly says except for when we don't. So the Libertarian Party needs to take a firm stance that, yes, in fact, we do support immigration. We believe that free people should be able to cross the borders of free countries freely. No exceptions, no ifs, ands, or buts. So that would be the one sort of with the platform on, is it's not strong enough, specifically in the immigration plank.
Okay, thank you. And now, Mr. Robinson, it's your turn. And remember to unmute, please. There you need to unmute.
That do it? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I believe you muted yourself again.
Does that do it?
That's got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any problem with the platform of the Libertarian Party, although I do find that it's a little bit it labors a bit sometimes trying to work together, and every once in a while contradicts each other. Believe that, and part of that is when someone asks, well, well, I'll just give an example where we don't believe in IRS or government programs, yet we have agreed to the Clinton expenditures of their era. And so I find there's a little laborious sometimes trying to put our principles into action. That said, I think trickle-up economics is the first ever programs that do put libertarian programs in our values in action. It is an ultra-capitalistic program that limits the size, scope, and of government, and so that's what you can expect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McAfee.
Yes, I found it odd that there was not a single word about cyber security in the Libertarian platform. The next war is not going to be fought with bombs and missiles and airplanes. It will be a cyber war, and it will be many times more devastating than any imaginable nuclear war. A report to Congress last year stated that an all-out cyber war with China, no bullets fired, no bombs dropped, would leave 90% of the American population dead. 90% would perish, and I think that's optimistic. We are 20 years behind the Chinese in cyber warfare and cyber security, and we must understand that the prime purpose of government is national defense, and we cannot defend ourselves as we stand without a strong cybersecurity system in place, and we do not have one. I see this as the greatest threat facing America today. We talk about finance, we talk about all these reforms, but without a nation, we have nothing. We will be speaking Chinese in 5 years.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize to you, Mr. McAfee. I think I mispronounced your name also. Now we go to Governor Johnson.
I don't think I'm sideways with anything within the Libertarian Party, and let me share with you one of the biggest surprises I had as governor of New Mexico, having never been involved in politics prior to becoming governor of New Mexico. And that was the fact that I really thought, naively, that Democrats and Republicans would vote for the best idea, as opposed to lining up on both sides and taking stands that didn't allow for compromise that would have made things better. So with regard to the Libertarian platform, I think it's really important to have a candidate who understands where we're at now, A, where we need to get to, Z, but America right now, the great middle, look, if we can go from A to F, that's something that is worth supporting. As governor of New Mexico, I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I vetoed 750 bills outright. I had thousands of line item vetoes, but every single piece of legislation that I viewed, was from the standpoint of will this legislation make things better? So let's have a libertarian who's running, who understands what the goal is, but will, in fact, compromise to make things better.
Thank you, Governor Johnson. And Mr. Petersen, you have the same question.
The question is?
Okay, the question is there anything in the Libertarian Party national platform that you disagree with or have reservations about? And if so, please tell us what and why.
No, not really. I mean, the Libertarian Party's national platform seems to articulate fairly well the same principles that I adhere to, those ideals of limited government, economic freedom, and personal liberty. It's all about the individual. The individual comes above the state. That is what I'm fighting for here, the principles of individualism and that American principles. And one thing that hasn't been discussed tonight is the Constitution. One of the main things that I'm trying to get across in this campaign to the American people, no matter what, win or lose, is that the President of the United States is one of limited powers. We have a checks and balances system here in the United States. And that Constitution, which was written by our framers, bound down anyone who was the president to the chains of the Constitution. I think that was Thomas Jefferson. He said, "Let no more be said of faith in men, but bind them down to the chains of the Constitution." And if elected President of the United States next year, I will take my oath of office very seriously, and I will only act underneath my constitutional prerogative. That I can promise you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Perry, you will be getting the question first this time, and we're going to go to social media from Facebook. The question is, we all agree that federal spending has gotten out of control. How does each one of you prioritize cuts to rein this bull in?
So the first thing that I would do is test expenditure from the federal government, and that would be the U.S. military. The second biggest expenditure being Social Security and Medicare. The U.S. military and foreign policy combine for nearly $1 trillion of federal spending. We need to cut that drastically. I'm not talking about a 5% cut, a 10% cut. I'm talking about a drastic cut, 50% at minimum, if not about an 80 or 90% cut. Bases need to be shut down as soon as possible. All troops that are stationed overseas need to be brought home as soon as possible. And all of the wars that are happening need to end as soon as possible. So that would be the top priority, is ending the wars.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Robinson, your question now. And you need to unmute again.
Does that do it?
You got it.
Okay. Well, fortunately, with my plan, we don't have to cut and kill. I mean, and stop programs and leave ourselves open to that type of criticism. We can meet people's needs better than they've ever been met before. We will transition to trickle-up economics. We will meet America's needs of poverty, health care, college, retirement. We'll restructure our loans and international aid. And by so doing, each of these programs, as I said before, being ultra-capitalistic, will reduce the size, the scope, and the cost of government. And one last thing. When the video was edited, it was edited 4 times every time my son spoke. So let's just make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, Mr. McAfee.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Perry was slightly incorrect on the 2 largest branches of government. The largest branch is the Department of Housing and Urban Development at $1.2 trillion. Social Security, $770 billion. The Department of Army and Navy is $560 billion. But why don't we think out of the box for a second? And this is not a libertarian concept. Transportation Security Administration has been proven over and over again to be absolutely ineffective. Federal marshals get hand grenades, guns, everything through there. And keep in mind, in September 11th, box cutters were the weapons of choice. So, if I'm a mathematician and I look at where people are spending money, in the TSA and in every federal agency, from 15 to 20% of the budget is overhead. So in the TSA, that's maintaining these machines, buying the machines, keeping them up to date. If we sent everybody home and paid their salary, I'm not suggesting this, we would save $5.5 billion a year. If we did the same thing with the FDA and the DEA, we would save close to $100 billion a year, and still nobody would be out of work. I'm just saying, if you look at the absurd sometimes, we can cut the federal budget by 75%. We're not even going to notice anything has changed. Now, I'm not saying we pay these people forever, but maybe we can give them to entrepreneurs and say, look, you can have these people for 5 years to help start your business. Well, when you finish, you pay them if you're making money. But we have to think independently. I'm a math major. 75% of our budget, 80%, is overhead. Pay the people, pocket the money. We would save $3 trillion a year by getting rid of those agencies we don't care for. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And now Governor Johnson.
Well, I'm advocating a balanced budget, and a balanced budget in today's dollars is approximately a 20% reduction in federal spending. There are agencies that stick out that should be cut. I believe one of those agencies is the Department of Education, but the biggies are the entitlements: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. I think Social Security is absolutely fixable. It would involve having means testing. It would involve raising the retirement age. And I think that part of those accounts should be able to be self-directed. When it comes to Medicaid and Medicare, I would devolve these programs to the state, and based on my experience as governor of New Mexico, I believe in my heart of hearts that I could deliver health care to those that are on welfare and to those that are over 65 with 20% less money. Make it 50 laboratories of best practice, and we would definitely have best practice that would get emulated. Of course, there'd be spectacular failure that would get avoided. But on top of all of what I've just said is the military. And keep in mind, we spend as much money on our military as the rest of the world combined. And when you're talking about a 20% reduction in the military, really, you're only talking about going back a handful of years to see that kind of a cut accomplished. And I want to point out also, balancing the federal budget and cutting federal spending by 20% would really be unprecedented. So this is a very, very lofty goal, and this is something that I would immerse myself in getting elected president. I would immerse myself into the dollars and cents on this and become as articulate as anyone could be about the dollars and cents. Something I did as governor of New Mexico after I got elected, was immersing myself in the numbers.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Petersen.
Yes, thank you. I think I've got the best plan that would force an agreement between both parties because, of course, if a Libertarian is elected, we will be sitting on top of the fact that we have a Republican and a Democratic Congress. So the way to force agreement, I think, between the two of them is to demand that everybody take a 1 penny out of every federal dollar haircut. And what that means is that we would have across-the-board spending cuts. Everybody's got to take a haircut. If the American people have to take a haircut when the economy goes down, so should the government. And the penny plan, what it does is it cuts 1 penny out of every federal dollar. And we would be on the path to a balanced budget in 5 years. That's 1 penny out of every federal dollar. I don't think that's too much to ask. So that would mean that I would be very sympathetic if the Congress were not to give me any spending cuts whatsoever. So I would have the right, I believe, to veto any bill which does not lead towards a balanced budget. If the Congress can't cut 1 penny out of every federal dollar, I think the American people would be right behind me when I demand that they send me an opportunity to have a balanced budget. I think that it's time for us to talk about these entitlement programs. The government had no right to set them up in the first place whatsoever, and my generation is just being absolutely screwed by these programs. We need to start talking about cutting them. When it comes to Social Security, they stole the money from us in the first place, so they should have to pay it back. But young people should be allowed to opt out. I think a lot of the young people watching this know exactly what I'm talking about. They want to opt out and get into the free market. If they had just been allowed to invest in Dow Jones Industrial Average, they would have had better returns year over year. Let's let young people opt out.
Thank you. And now we go to Mr. Kerbel.
Hi there, Steve Kerbel, and I wanted to tell you the key to this entire situation is by looking at the discretionary budget and the non-discretionary budget. We have a $1.1 trillion discretionary budget, and that is where we can make the first cuts. And and Austin makes a point that the Democrats and Republicans are going to fight to have massive changes, but I would like to add the fact that while he's correct, they're also going to be mindful of the fact that the nation has elected a libertarian, which means they want something different, and if they don't fall in line a little bit more, they're going to be losing their jobs next time around too. So I would anticipate we can go a lot farther than many people think. I think we've got to cut the military in half. We got to bring our people home. We got to honor our treaties and then end them. We've got to close out most of these things. The Department of Education is a big waste of money. There's some things we need, some things we don't. Department of Commerce. There's so many things that have to be addressed. The other thing too is you have to recognize when you delegate a lot of these expenses to the state, what you find is that the state has such a financial burden to keep up with federal regulation that that's a cost savings all by itself. So Social Security should be incrementally changed to the point where it's voluntary in wherever you invest your retirement. Medicare and Medicaid to the states. You know, that is the way to do it. But when you start reducing these federal regulatory agencies, what you find is there's just not a cost savings in the federal government. It's nationwide.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, Mr. Robinson, you will get this one first. And a couple of you have already touched on the federal entitlements. How would you deal with ballooning federal entitlements, especially Social Security and Medicare? And do you believe that the federal government has a contractual obligation or any moral responsibility to make good on the promise made to those who have paid into these systems? Mr. Robinson, you go first. Unmute. And you need to unmute.
Said do it?
Got it.
Okay. Federal entitlements. First of all, we've all been looking for an opportunity to transition away from them, and trickle-up economics will do that with a different retirement plan that is not socialistic. It is capitalistic, and it will start at birth and put in just a very small amount of money. And when you're 65 years old, I think every American can plan on becoming a millionaire with $1.5 million, $2 million in the bank at the age of 65. That's what my plan does, and that's just exactly how powerful it is. In the meantime, the transition, Social Security and Medicare need to be funded differently, and I have a different way of funding that is more fair. It changes the way that it is funded. Employers no longer have a matching share. The cap on income is lifted. All income is taxed. All of us, the amount that we put in, 6.3%, would be reduced to 4%. And when you do those steps, you'll still have an increase of Social Security of about 80% that we will use to keep it solvent, transition over to trickle-up economics, and that's my plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. McAfee, you're next. Okay, we'll see if we can come back. He's not there. Let's go to Governor Johnson.
I got it now. Sorry.
Mr. McAfee, you there?
I'm here. Okay.
Go ahead.
So it depends on the entitlements. I mean, Social Security, people paid lots of money every month into an account that the government said they would hold and invest. Instead, they stole it. But we have an obligation to these people. I'm really sorry. Now, if you're the age of 40, nobody who's 40 believes they will ever get Social Security. Other entitlements. We send people off to war, young men and women, saying, you may not come home. And if you do, you may be missing an arm or a leg or both. You may be maimed. Now, we have an unwritten agreement with these people, certainly. And the way we treat our veterans today is a travesty. It is a horror, and we should be ashamed. So these types of entitlements where you have actually paid your money and the government is supposed to be taking care of it for you, it's not our fault that the government stole it. But we owe our veterans something. When it comes to people who don't want to work or cannot work, states who have made a policy, if you're on welfare, then you have to work. The welfare rolls drop massively. People just don't want to do it. They go back to selling drugs or whatever they were doing beforehand. So every entitlement is different. I think some of the most horrific entitlements are with the Department of Agriculture, who pays farmers not to grow food. Think of this madness.
Thank you very much. And now Governor Johnson.
Well, first of all, Social Security is imminently savable, and yes, we paid into Social Security so you could have a very fair means testing. And by very fair means testing, should you get more money out than what you paid in if you have a certain income level? Well, I think that that's a very fair adjustment to Social Security. Also raising the retirement age and being able to self-direct retirement accounts. I'm in the camp that really believes that there are those that need government help, that there really are those in need, and without the government, they don't receive assistance that they otherwise wouldn't get. That said, we've gone way over the line with regard to welfare, in this case, Medicaid and Medicare, of course, over 65. But these are programs, I mean, these are the biggies right here. And to address them, devolve health care to the states, give health care to the states, block grant the states a fixed amount of money, 20% less than what we're currently spending. You will have spectacular success. I think the success will be emulated by free market. You'll have horrible failure that will get avoided, but this is how we get ourselves with regard to how we reform the entitlements, Medicaid, Medicare.
Thank you. And now Mr. Petersen.
I mean, obviously, libertarians are not for these kinds of redistribution of wealth programs, but why do we have to raise the retirement age for people? Why don't we start rating the accounts of the congressional pensions? What about all of these federal workers and their very lucrative pensions? We can save money by abolishing entire programs. Let's take the money that they're stealing from us and give it back to the people. This is not going to make me very popular with the federal workers, who I will soon be the boss of, but I'm going to demand that they do more with less. We're going to cut their budgets, and I will not be raising the retirement ages of the American citizens. We are going to go into Congress, and we're going to start raiding their pension accounts because they took it from us in the first place. The criminal government, who has been stealing it from us since the height of the progressive era, the last 100 years, will now have to suffer and pay for everything that they have wrought upon us, the American people. And as the President of the United States, I will go in and I will not make the American people pay for it. I will make the people pay who took it from us in the first place. And that's the truth, and that's what we ought to be fighting for as Americans, not forcing the American people to suffer, but forcing the people who wrought this upon us to pay for it. They're the ones who should have to pay.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Kerbel.
Thank you. You know, as I mentioned earlier, Medicare and Medicaid, I think that clearly the states would be much more efficient in managing those, and that would be what I would do with that. So I'll speak mostly about Social Security. You know, right now, people have been paying such a huge percentage of their income into Social Security for their entire working lives that, you know, they have a certain expectation that that won't be entirely lost. And so what I think really has to happen is you give people the elective ability to, whether to participate or not. If they want out, they can get into a privatized program. They may end up, if they're at age 40, for example, and they want to change, they may end up at retirement age getting something from Social Security and something from their private retirement plans. The key is choice, and I think that that is the way to feather down the expenses long term without a massive implosion of the expectations of the nation.
Okay, thank you. And now Mr. Perry.
Social Security originally was something that people would opt into, or they at least had the option to opt out of, and that changed back, I believe, in the 1960s. It should once again be something that people are allowed to opt into if they want to. It should not be this coercive tax that gets stolen from the workers before they ever see the money. One of the planks that I'm running on is to end all coercive forms of taxation. That includes the Social Security tax, the Medicare tax, the income tax, all of the hidden tariffs that you don't see directly, and every other form of tax that exists that is taken from you not consensually. Now, I want to go back and talk about the budget for just 1 second, because I was mentioned in a response on that, and I feel that I deserve to be able to correct something. When I mentioned that the American foreign policy cost about $1 trillion, it was mentioned, well, the military is $568 billion, That's true, but when you add in the funding for the VA that is used to pay the medical bills of men and women that were in the military, add in all of the foreign aid, add in the HUD spending that goes to people that were in the military, in total it is nearly $1 trillion that winds up getting spent per year on American foreign policy. That needs to be cut, hopefully to zero, but in the interim, I think a 50% cut would be necessary and immediate.
Thank you, and I apologize for not being able to give you the opportunity to respond earlier. The next question will go first to Mr. McAfee. How would you conduct the war on terrorism and deal with the threat posed by the Islamic State on our national security? And how would you respond to military threats made by nations or foreign troops against the United States or our citizens?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to take some small responsibility for the creation of terrorism. Did we not help create terrorism by dropping bombs and interfering in the nation, in foreign nations, in their internal affairs? If you were here in America and these invisible airplanes manned by people halfway around the world killed your brother, your cousin, your next door neighbors, your father, you would be angry. You would be frustrated. You would want to be a terrorist. By continuing to say, we will fight you, what are we doing? Terrorism is an ideal. Extremism is an ideal. It comes across the internet. I mean, the San Bernardino shootings, they didn't come from outside. They got there, they were radicalized by the idea. You cannot fight an idea. We need to stop interfering in the internal affairs of foreign nations and bring our troops home. And also, we need to make our military up to date with cyber warfare and cyber security. Nothing else will help us, sir.
Thank you. Governor Johnson.
Well, there is a very real Islamic terrorist threat. How do we best deal with this Islamic terrorist threat? Well, it's not through our military interventions. Our military interventions are not the cause for Islamic terrorism, but they haven't made it better by any means whatsoever. So let's stop with boots on the ground. Let's stop with the bombs that we're dropping. Let's stop with the drone flights that are killing thousands of innocent civilians that just make this whole situation a lot worse. Let's contain Islamic terrorism to the Middle East, and let's cut off the funding to Islamic terrorism beyond where it's at, and for that matter, where it's at. Let's get smart about this. Let's follow the lead that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates have taken and cut off the funding. Let's use our brains rather than guns, because the guns just haven't worked. Our interventions just don't work. We make bad situations at best the same, but oftentimes we make bad situations worse.
Thank you, Governor. Next, Mr. Petersen.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's just not forget that it was the neoconservatives and the social democrats in Congress, people like Senator Clinton, Senator Hillary Clinton, who brought us this disastrous war in Iraq and the $2 trillion of blood and treasure that has been wasted in the Middle East, which has done nothing, no good for us. It's only harmed our national security. But now we've kicked the hornet's nest, and unfortunately it will be up to one of our administrations, hopefully one of us who will be elected next year, to take care of it. I am very convinced by Dr. Ron Paul's non-interventionist foreign policy. However, that does not mean that we are pacifists. And after 9/11, Congressman Ron Paul went to the Congress and asked them to follow the Constitution and to lay letters of marque and reprisal in order to deal with Osama bin Laden and his compatriots. This would have been a cost-effective way to deal with methods of terrorism, and I think that Congress needs to reconsider these provisions in order for us to protect our national security. What this does is it lays a letter of marque. You become a marked man. Al-Baghdadi, ISIS, and all of his compatriots would suddenly be under threat from constitutional privateers. This is how Thomas Jefferson fought the Islamic terrorists of his day. This is the constitutional way for us to deal with these problems. We should obey the Constitution, and we should never shrink from terrorism, and we should stop fear-mongering.
Your time's up. Next, Mr. Kerbel.
You know, I look at it like this. This is not a problem that cropped up in one day. We were bombing these people for the last 70 years. You know, it's very hard for someone to forget who killed their family members. And so we certainly heat them up by doing all this intervention activity. Regime change certainly doesn't help. And so basically, if we were to adopt a policy of non-interventionism, it would still take 70 years for these people to forget about us if they ever did. So I think the key to this is this. I think we need to wind down our affairs in the Middle East. I think we need to let them work it out. You know, I think at the same time we need to make sure our defense is strong. And I think that if part of our strong defense is, of course, our own military, but I think a big part that's overlooked is the Second Amendment rights. I've always believed that, looking at the San Bernardino shooter, for example, I mean, how many people would they have got if everybody in there was packing? I mean, the fact is, if somebody gets hurt or killed because of a firearm in the United States, trying to take away other people's firearms only makes the criminals stronger. So the key is a strong defense at home, the ability for the people to defend themselves per the Second Amendment, and a non-interventionist strategy.
Thank you very much. And next, Mr. Perry.
So I want to start by saying that the group known as ISIS is about as representative of Islam as the Westboro Baptist Church is representative of Christianity, meaning that they're not representative of the religion as a whole. They represent a very small faction, and it's just that. It's a very small faction. Now, the way you fight against the Islamic State is you stop giving them money and you stop giving them weapons. And then they won't have either in order to continue fighting. And if you actually look at what's going on in Syria, and most people aren't aware that there's a ceasefire that's been in effect for about a week, even though not everybody has stopped the fighting, but there is a ceasefire and the fighting has slowed, and they're beginning peace talks, I believe, on Wednesday of this week. So hopefully there will be a solution coming to that conflict, that civil war that's been raging. But if you actually look at the fighting, it's people that claim to be Muslims fighting against other people that claim to be Muslims. The people in Syria and the people in the Islamic State, they're not a threat to you or me, they're a threat to one another. But the way you fight them is to stop funding them, and you stop giving them weapons.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Robinson. And remember to unmute, please. Try it again.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I believe that we will defeat ISIS with low-level techniques. They're mercenaries. We'll drive their oil. We'll take away their money. I'm very surprised that we have not been doing that over the last decade. To hear that just recently we began doing that just really blew my mind. We'll beat them with local coalitions. They're a very hated group. Every person in the world hates ISIS. We will have a sacred citizen policy. There won't be any more of this kidnapping and holding for ransom and that sort of thing. That's just not going to go anymore. And otherwise, though, I would like our foreign policy to be one that spreads our American values by creating wealth and health care and rebuilding the infrastructure of impoverished countries, and do all that we can to help the world and become the loving nation that we've always been, and to be able to show that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next question, and Governor Johnson, you will get this question first. Apple is fighting federal attempts requiring it to help unlock the San Bernardino terrorist iPhone. As president, how would your administration handle such issues, and should such companies be required to have a security backdoor available for the government to see what's on someone's personal devices?
Well, I'm listening to both sides of this argument, and I'm not front and center, so maybe it's different if I'm front and center. But based on what I'm hearing, I'm siding with Apple. Look. The government is asking for a master key to the hotel. You know, give us a key to all the hotel rooms. And the court order says, you know, no. The court order says, give us a key to the one phone. Apple says they can't do that. So, like I say, I'm on Apple's side with this one. If Apple provides the master key, we're going to all be subject to our privacy being gone. And immediately, a death sentence may be issued to a whole bunch of Chinese who have conducted subversive government activity that will end up sentencing them to death. That is a potential. So I'm on Apple's side with this one. Court order, fine. One key, fine. But apparently, like I say, Apple says that's not to be the case.
Thank you. Mr. Petersen.
Yes, I do agree with Governor Johnson. Apple does have the right of it in this case. The big issue is not necessarily just the loss of liberties here in the United States, which we would undergo. And we've seen, of course, that the government can't be trusted because they have gone and issued blanket warrants in effect to gather our metadata here. We need to be very careful and safeguard American liberties and Fourth Amendment protections. Apple should not be compelled to create a product which could be used against not only us, but those dissidents and the third world, perhaps, that are fighting against oppressive governments. All governments tend to be oppressive to a certain degree, but remember those people who are fighting for their own freedoms in other countries. And of course, if you're an American citizen and you travel to another country, if you go to Malaysia or the Philippines or Japan, perhaps, some of these countries, they'll get a hold of your phone at the border checkpoint, and they may be able to use that master key to get into your phone. So Americans need to look at this from an issue of their own personal protection, as well as those people who are fighting for their own liberties all around the world. All humans deserve the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the government is in the wrong, and Apple should stand their ground.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kerbel.
Apple's right. Here's the thing. I am a firm believer in the Fourth Amendment. We've all learned that when you give your government your finger, they want your hand. When they get your hand, they want your arm, and then they want your whole body. So it's no question that, well, this may be a precedent that they're trying to set to break into everyone's privacy and security in strict violation of the Fourth Amendment. You know where they're going to go with this, so I think Apple needs to stand firm. I think that this is the biggest enemy we the people have right now is apparently our own government, way overseeing terrorist activity. So yeah, I think Apple's doing the right thing, and I stand behind them.
Okay, thank you. And now Mr. Perry.
One thing that most people are forgetting is that it was the FBI that reset the password on that particular iPhone in the first place. And it's not a good comparison to say that it's like the FBI asking a hotel owner a key to each hotel room, because the hotel owner has physical possession over the hotel building, thus having access to the hotel room. In this case, Apple does not own the iPhone in question. Apple does not have physical possession of the iPhone in question. And then the FBI is saying, we want you to create a program that unlocks this and every iPhone, even though the FBI is saying it's only going to be this one and these 12 others that we have open lawsuits against, where we're demanding that you open those too. So first it's one phone, then it's 12, and it's actually going to be every phone. But again, Apple does not have physical control over that phone. It would be akin to a company asking, or rather the FBI asking a company that makes fire safes to create a backdoor for every fire safe that has ever been produced, because there might be something in one of them. So I firmly stand with Apple in this case, but not on everything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson. You need to unmute.
That do it? Can you hear me?
Does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you may have hit your camera too. You may want to turn your camera back on. You turned your video off.
Let's see. That do it? Can you see me? There we go.
Can't
okay. Given these circumstances, I will side with Apple in protecting our privacy. I think this is an unusual situation where This is terrorism after the fact. It's not like it hasn't happened and we think it's going to happen. Terrorism happened, and there are some people possibly communicated with that brought that terrible act forward, and we have some need to know about them. But as the way that it stands now, I really would hope that Apple would look into the future, anticipate that at some point in time a government or other governments may force them to open the phone, and when and if that happens, I'd like for Apple to have some software pre-written that once the phone is open, that the barrier of the cloud cannot be broken and our data cannot be compromised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McAfee.
I debated the FBI mouthpiece on CNN last week, a very eloquent, polished, and fine demeanored person. However, I admonished him that first of all, he said that in order for us to protect you, you have to give up some privacies and freedoms. I did not quote Ben Franklin. I should have. I just went on with what they were doing in terms of making us insecure. Because if Apple creates a master key, that master key cannot be kept under lock and key. It's software. It's been proven over and over throughout history that in every single case where a backdoor or a master key was created, our foreign nations and black hat hackers had that within a matter of weeks. So this is the fundamental problem. I didn't even talk about privacy because he came prepared to talk privacy. I talked about you're making us more unsecure. At the end, he compromised and he says, well, maybe we can work together. I offered to unlock that phone for free. I can do it. 10,000 other hackers can do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next question, Mr. Petersen, you will get this one first, and this one is also from social media, from Twitter. Is there a role for the government in preparing society for a future when many, if not most, jobs are automated?
Absolutely not. The reason that we have automation is because of the free market capitalist system. But let's not forget that you get a better job by having automated robot workers, because then you get a higher pay to service the robot workers, and those are better paying jobs that require more education. And we want people to be more educated and have better jobs that can create the robots. Who will build the robots, of course, to service the humans? And I think that technology and industrialization and capitalism has always been a positive thing for humanity. So I envision a future where we need less government, because government is really what should be automated. We don't really necessarily need them to even build the roads, so what do we need government to do exactly? I'm having a hard time figuring it out. Hopefully we can envision a future where government is so small that we don't even know that it's really there.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kerbel.
Yeah, I don't see that the government should be participating in preparing us for these future activities. To me, it seems that the best chance for people to be able to do well in the future is to have the least number of roadblocks to their success. And from what I've seen, we find that government sets up myriad roadblocks to people's success that have taken away their liberties, their choices. And so, no, I don't think that it's necessary at all. I think that the best thing government can do for people's futures is to get out of the way of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, Mr. Perry.
I think we would actually have more automation if it weren't for government. The fact that automation exists at all shows that the market that is hardly free at all can thrive in spite of government, not because of government. There's a tired joke that libertarians are only libertarians because they hate roads. And I have to agree, I do hate roads because I want flying cars. And there would be flying cars if it weren't for government hindering the production of flying cars, the ability of people to use flying cars, because there's all sorts of licensing and regulatory things that stand in the way of me having a flying car. So the fact that there's automation, again, it's in spite of government, not because of, and government just needs to get out of the way.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson, your turn.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we got you.
Okay, wonderful. No, government should not be involved with central planning. It's proven over time that is just simply not an effective thing. And our system of capitalism and free enterprise and freedom has always worked much better and proven that we're the finest nation in the world. Our country has always progressed toward automation. This is not something new or should confound us. New jobs, opportunities will reveal themselves as they always have. But one final thing to consider is that through trickle-up economics and my policies, we'll probably all be wealthy, healthy, and educated anyway. And so if we don't have jobs, I believe that we'll all be fine as it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McAfee.
Yes, sir. What has been proven is as computers have become ubiquitous within our society, currently 40% of the workforce is either a programmer, a system engineer, or a maintenance person on computers. So the more that computers invade and become part of the glue of our society, the more opportunity there is for jobs. Now, if you don't like computer programming, well, you know, there are things that you can do. But hang on. But the fundamental issue is that all progress creates jobs. It just creates them differently. So what's wrong with that? I mean, computer programming is a fascinating, mysterious, challenging affair. So if we're all computer programmers, is that a problem? It's high-paying work.
Okay, thank you. Governor Johnson.
In the 2012 election cycle, they did an analysis on which presidential candidate had the best record on jobs, and it was actually me. And when asked to respond to that, my response was, as it was when I was governor, look, government doesn't create any jobs, the private sector does. We're not stressing entrepreneurship enough. Really, the model of the future is Uber. The model of the future is Airbnb. I am proposing zero corporate income tax. Look, level the playing field, and with zero corporate income tax, if you own a company, why would you locate? Why would you expand? Why would you start up a company anywhere in the world other than the United States with zero corporate income tax? Set or prepare the playing field, make it level, and then stand back and let people be the entrepreneurs that we're really not espousing either. We're not teaching kids or letting kids understand that they can be entrepreneurs, that they can create their own jobs, they can create jobs for others.
Okay, thank you. And this will be our final question before we go to closing statements, and this will go to Mr. Kerbel first, excuse me, I mispronounced it again. One North Carolina legislator has proposed legalizing marijuana for terminally ill patients, and some states have legalized marijuana use in some manner. How would you go about handling federal drug laws that conflict with state laws on marijuana legislation? And how would you handle the war on drugs?
Okay. You can hear me. Okay. Well, the war on drugs is a miserable failure. It has not discouraged anyone from getting or using drugs. It's just put a whole lot of innocent people in jail and beefed up the power of organized crime and the expense of government to fight it. You know, drugs are typically not good for people. You know, they're a health issue. They're certainly not a crime. When it comes to marijuana, that's the tip of the iceberg. I personally believe that it shouldn't even be regulated. I think it's just something that people could choose for their personal use. As long as they don't harm anybody else, it's up to them. I believe strongly in the principle of self-ownership, which is a big foundation of libertarianism, and this is a key issue here. While I don't advocate people going out using drugs, I certainly don't advocate government planting drugs on them for the purpose of throwing them in jail. I really think that this is a personal choice. There should be no government intervention whatsoever. It should not be a crime in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perry.
I believe that all substances should be as legal as tomatoes. Why do I specify tomatoes? Well, of the state statutes that I've looked through, and I've looked through numerous ones, I cannot find the word tomato anywhere, meaning that there are no regulations that I'm aware of regulating how many tomatoes you can possess, how many tomato plants you can possess, how many tomatoes you can buy at the store, how many tomatoes you can give or sell to a neighbor. But there are general regulations on commerce, so they might wind up saying, well, you're conducting business, so you have to jump through this hoop, but it's not specific to tomatoes. So in states like Colorado, where I'll be at the end of the week, and Washington, they have regulated cannabis like wine, or at least that's the lie that they tell you, but unlike wine, there are regulations on how much cannabis you can possess. There's no regulation in the state of Colorado on how many bottles of wine you can purchase, how many grapes you can own, how many grape plants you can own, how many grapes you can give to your neighbor for the purpose of making wine. So everything, including crystal meth, which by the way is a Schedule II substance, meaning that there actually are medicinal purposes or recognized medicinal purposes for crystal meth. Cannabis, on the other hand, which is legal for medicinal purposes in, I believe, 25 states now, at the federal level is still a Schedule I, meaning that the feds do not recognize any medicinal purposes. So what I would do for the drug war, I would...
Your time's up. Thank you. Mr. Robinson. You need to unmute.
Did that do it?
Yeah, but I think you also hit your... Yeah, you're on. Good. You're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I am an advocate for the legalization of recreational and medicinal marijuana. I believe that Americans have a right to gravitate toward safer methods of relaxation. Just a quick comparison by the Center of Disease Control of alcohol to marijuana. Here are just a few facts, and this in fact is how Colorado was able to legalize their state. They simply pointed out the differences or how safe marijuana is. Here are some statistics from the Center of Disease Control. For alcohol, the cost is $59 billion a year, and in marijuana it's zero unless it's self-imposed. In alcohol, there's 1 death per 51 minutes, none in marijuana. There are 30 people who die per day vehicle-related, with 0 vehicle-related deaths to marijuana. 10,000 deaths per year vehicle-related, 241 deaths per day vehicle-related, or just in general related. The Center of Disease Control shows 88,000 total deaths per year related to alcohol, with 2 deaths per year related to marijuana. And listen to this figure, it's the most important of all. The Center of Disease Control shows 2.5 million years of potential life lost annually. 2.5 million years of potential life lost annually to alcohol. And so I really think that often people simply gravitate to what they feel and know is safer for them, and they have every right to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAfee.
I believe that it is not possible to legislate what we do with our bodies or to our bodies. This has been proven throughout history. We should have learned that here in America during Prohibition when alcohol was illegal. During Prohibition, more alcohol was consumed than since the Danes invented beer. Nothing changed. I don't take drugs. I haven't taken drugs for 35 years, but I was addicted to heroin. And I can promise you, sir, that the addiction is its own punishment. We do not need to punish you further. So all drugs of any kind, I don't care how devastating you might think they are, it is your body. Does your body belong to you or to the government? If it belongs to you, then you may do as you please with that body as long as that body does not interfere with me. So we can't legislate drugs. By legislating, we further impose suffering, hardships, and total madness on a society, and we have created the most vicious and brutal criminal organization the planet has ever seen with the
Well, good news, bad news when it comes to marijuana. In 1999, I was the highest elected official in the country to call for the legalization of marijuana, 1999. Bad news, 2016, I'm still the highest elected official to call for the legalization of marijuana. Now, Bernie Sanders, I guess, rolled out of bed sometime during the last year, hit his head, and he's also espousing legalizing marijuana. Thank you very much, but I think that that has to do a lot with his popularity currently. Look, I think 90% of the drug problem is prohibition related, not use related. That's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. I believe that President Obama will deschedule marijuana as a Class 1 narcotic as he leaves office. He's had this opportunity prior till now. I don't know why he hasn't done it, but I just hope he does it going out the door. That will make a difference. I also believe that California will vote to legalize recreational marijuana, and that will really be a tipping point nationally.
Thank you. Mr. Petersen.
Yes, obviously I do believe that we need a complete end to the federal war on drugs, and my understanding of this has come from a thorough intellectual understanding of why the war on drugs has not worked. My experience with drugs obviously is nowhere near as extensive as my two main competitors, one a former drug dealer and one now a current drug dealer, so good luck running for President of the United States on that, gentlemen. But we do need to end the war on drugs, and there are many suffering people out there who do not have access to the life-saving drugs that they need. There are many children who suffer from epilepsy or Parkinson's. They do not have access to these life-saving, miraculous cures. I think we need to completely end the war on drugs, and the way the president can do that on day one is to set the federal drug schedule of all drugs to 0. This would effectively let the states decide what their drug problems, how they should handle their problems with drugs. The federal government should have absolutely no role.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Petersen actually referred to a couple of other candidates. I will give either of you, and I don't know which ones he was referring to, so I will let you.
Yeah, this is Gary Johnson. Let me just say that in my role as CEO and president of Cannabis Sativa Incorporated, I have an opportunity here, and have had an opportunity to make the world a better place. On the medicinal side of marijuana, these products don't kill anyone compared to legal prescription drugs, which do the same thing and statistically kill 100,000 people. And then I have always maintained that by legalizing marijuana, it will lead to less overall substance abuse because people are going to find it as such a safer alternative than everything else that's out there, starting with alcohol. And that's the campaign that Colorado used to legalize marijuana, that marijuana is safer than alcohol. So my role as President, CEO of Cannabis Sativa, make the world a better place.
Thank you, Governor.
Proud of it. Proud of it.
Mr. McAfee.
I was the one referred to as the fast drug dealers. I like you, Austin, very much. And I would recommend that since you have very little experience with it, that you spend an afternoon with me dropping 2 hits of acid. It will change your life. I do not recommend drugs for anyone, but I'd be happy to do that for you, sir. I'm not going to take it with you. I don't take it anymore, but I'll make sure you don't try to fly off of a building, okay?
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're ready to go to our closing statements, and we're going to go in the reverse order of our opening statements. And so first, I'm going to give it to you for your closing statement, Mr. McAfee.
I'd like to say that the Libertarian Party consistently believes that they cannot win the presidency and acts like they do. All great transformations in politics and government happened overnight. They don't happen in small steps, ever. Look at Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital, and I'm not promoting communism by any standard, in 1867. Nobody read that book until Lenin picked it up in 1915. 2 years later, Russia was turned upside down. And on the nonviolent side, in 1991, December of 1991, in November, everything was fine in Russia. In December, it had collapsed and disintegrated into 15 separate states. Look at history. We take our tiny lives and the tiny amount of time that we live, and we try to extrapolate the future. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Robinson, your closing statement.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
As believers in capitalism and free markets, we as libertarians should be able to put our money where our mouth is. We should offer demonstrable proof that we can affect the lives of Americans in a way that is better than the failed policies of socialism and big government. Unfortunately, what generally comes from our branch of thinking is that we should all pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. I challenged myself to do better, and trickle-up economics was the answer. We will usher in a new era of prosperity and equality, and we have the mechanism by which to accomplish. These programs are affordable, even profitable, and we can easily protect the money supply from inflation. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I challenge anyone who does. The role of government in birth loop is minimized from the things it attempts to do to that of a clearinghouse for loans and nothing more. The cost, scope, and size of government is reduced as each program is shifted from government control to the forces of free market system. Our federal budget will decline, our almost insolvent debt will reverse to a surplus, and we as Americans, every one of us, will be healthy, wealthy, and free. God bless you.
Okay, thank you very much. And next, your closing statement, Mr. Perry.
When I first joined the Libertarian Party in 1999, it was proudly proclaimed as the party of principle. And I want to once again have the Libertarian Party be that party of principle, the party that is not a party of half measures. It's not a party of compromise. It's a party of principles. The principle of self-ownership, the principle of freedom on every issue, every time. The party that stands up and says, we will pardon all nonviolent drug offenders. We will pardon all whistleblowers. And that's something, if I get elected on day one, the first 3 people that get a pardon from President Darryl Perry, Ross Ulbricht, the alleged creator of the Silk Road, who was given a double life sentence plus 40 years for running a website that allowed people to safely purchase substances that wound up making the black market safer. The second person would be Private Chelsea Manning, who blew the whistle on war crimes of the United States federal government. The third person, I would drop all of the charges against Edward Snowden, another whistleblower who exposed all of the horrible things that the NSA was doing and probably still is to some extent. Then there would be a blanket pardon for all federal nonviolent drug offenders and everyone else that has been convicted of a crime that has no victim.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kerbel.
2016 represents a very interesting year, and I do want to thank the Libertarian Party of North Carolina for putting on this debate and doing such a quality job. But I do want to say that, you know, people need to raise their expectations for how we're going to perform this year. I don't know how many of you saw that Rasmussen study that showed that if it's Trump versus Clinton, 22% are already voting for somebody else. So if we get in there at the right place at the right time and we take advantage of that momentum, it could put us over the top. So we need to actually think about who we're going to be putting in the White House, not just who we're putting up to represent us. Because if we do this right, this could be an amazing year. 2016 could be a turning point for the Libertarian Party, for the United States of America, and for individual liberty that was called for by the Founding Fathers, and we need it back. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Mr. Petersen.
10 years ago, a 72-year-old OBGYN country doctor by the name of Ron Paul inspired me. He lit a fire underneath me that started a revolution in this country and inspired hundreds and thousands of young people into activism. 10 years later, I am now a presidential candidate of the United States because of the revolution that continues to this day. I've been building an army of freedom ninjas that are at my back watching right now and who have been supporting me in this campaign. I have been able to raise a significant sum of money and cross this beautiful country that I love to defend the rights of all individual citizens, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and those constitutional principles which all Americans should come and rally to my banner for. I am fighting for Americanism, economic freedom, and personal liberty, and the right to be left alone. Help me take over the government so we can leave everyone alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Governor Johnson.
There is no way that a third party is going to get elected unless the third party is in the presidential debates. I'm suing the Presidential Debate Commission right now, and the result of that will be that the Libertarian nominee has the potential, and this will get heard timely, it could get heard before the Supreme Court, but the Libertarian nominee has the potential, very real potential, of being in the general election debates against whom I think will be Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Lawsuit aside, the Libertarian Party here has an opportunity because of those two candidates being so polarized. The Libertarian candidate has the opportunity to poll at 15%, which is the current Presidential Debate Commission threshold for being in the general election debates. Libertarians have a big decision here. Which candidate is going to present libertarian ideas and beliefs in such a way that maybe this time can get elected? And I'm in this for that reason, to get elected. We're throwing, I don't want to call it a Hail Mary. We've been thinking about this, and we've enacted a plan to make it happen. Thanks to North Carolina. Great debate format. Thank you,
Governor. I want to thank all the candidates. You've been great. You've been very cooperative. You stopped most of the time when I said thank you, so I really appreciate that. Thanks for the effort, for the technical effort you made. We've also had technical assistance, and I'm going to butcher your name. I butchered a couple of candidates, but I'm going to try it. Sashi Ramchandani of Google. Thank you. If I butchered your name, please accept my apology. Mark Hurd of the California Libertarian Party. Also, for help organizing this, John Gregory Vincent, the Communications Director for the North Carolina Libertarian Party. Brian Irving, who is Press Secretary for the North Carolina Libertarian Party. Also, Brad helped out tremendously. Brad Hessel with the Libertarian Party in North Carolina. Also want to thank Kelly McCullen, Nick Fuchs, and Brad Strom with Public Television and the North Carolina channel for helping us set this up. This wraps up our 2016 Libertarian presidential debate. Remember, North Carolina voters, that primary election day is next Tuesday, March the 15th. And remember, we do have the voter ID law. It's new. You will need your voter ID unless you have some exceptions. Thank you very much, and good night.